Hello everyone, this is KARM Vidvata, an online resource hub for young women. My name is Anushka and I'm the Senior Program and Learning Lead at KARM.
And I am Aishwarya. I am Program and Learning Lead at KARM.
Alright, so I'm sure you filled a lot of application forms and even cleared some of them and made it to the interview stage. Congratulations, by the way. Very difficult stage, right?
Yeah.
In fact, one of the most dreaded stages in the application process, but we've got your back. So let's think about preparing ourselves for interviews. All right, so let's start with the first thing. What is the most important thing to keep in your mind when preparing yourselves for interview? Now, the first thing that I've written down on my list is organizational context. What does that even mean? Now, when you apply for jobs, you look at a job description. Not only do you want to understand your job description perfectly well, but understand how your work fits into the context of the entire company, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're applying for a marketing role in a travel company. Okay, so not only do we want to understand what marketing means in this company, but how your work contributes to the rest of the organization. Okay, so that is what organizational context means. Understand your JD, understand the company, do your research.
Yeah. One thing you should keep in mind is like when you're preparing your answers, right? What we tend to do is like we'll have those 3-4 lines that we use everywhere. So we shouldn't do that. We should keep the context in mind and tailor your answers accordingly. For example, if I'm applying for a social media internship versus a marketing internship, my tell me about yourself will be a little different, right? So keep that in mind. And some things that you can include in your tell me about yourself is like which college you're from, maybe the skills that you have, some projects that you have done, and also maybe your hobbies. But make sure that you keep it crisp and you summarize everything in like 4-5 sentences and not keep blabbering, right? Like say 2 minutes you're just telling about yourself. Don't do that. So keep it short, keep it concise, and keep it to the point.
Yeah, and one thing that I'd like to add to this point is that for the same type of job, your tell me about yourself can be very different for 2 different organizations.
Yeah.
That is why context is very, very, very important. Prepare yourself accordingly. Let's jump to point number 3, which is subject matter expertise. I think this one's a no-brainer, but this is important at every level. Let's say you're a school student, you're applying for scholarships or higher education programs. इसका मतलब होता है कि अगर आप स्कूल में हैं तो आपको अपने सब्जेक्ट्स के बारे में अच्छी नॉलेज होनी चाहिए, बिकॉज वो आपसे बायोलॉजी के बारे में क्वेश्चंस पूछ सकते हैं. अगर आप साइकोलॉजी पढ़ रहे हैं उसके बारे में क्वेश्चंस पूछे जा सकते हैं इंटरव्यू में, right? If you're at a college level, people could ask you about the subjects that you're studying. Now, this is a very academic preparation that you have to do, and you have to invest your time. And this also goes on for people who are working professionals, right? If you are currently working and trying to switch jobs, you should know about the skills and the in-demand tools or skills that will be required for your upcoming job. So that is subject matter expertise.
Yeah. And another thing that you should keep in mind is being able to talk about what's written in your CV, right? If you've mentioned a certain academic project in your CV, you should know everything about it. ऐसा नहीं कि मैंने कुछ कर लिया था अब मुझे याद नहीं है. You know, that shouldn't be the case. So you should know everything that's written in your CV. If you've done internship, what your role was, how did you contribute to the organization, how the impact that you had in that organization, ये सब आपको आना चाहिए.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, a very interesting thing that I'd like to add to this is that I know that your CV carries all of this information, but don't sort of say the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Here it's very important to relate what you've done to the kind of impact that you've had, right? So everything goes back to the context, everything goes back to the job description that is at hand. This brings me to the 5th point, which is not memorizing anything for your interview. Now, it might be a handy strategy when giving your CBSE board exams, but it does not work when you're giving interviews. I'll tell you why this is important. A lot of times, memorizing can throw us completely off track when we forget things. Also, it's something very easily spotted when a person's looking at you or when they're talking to you. Interviews are very much like conversations, right? The people people want to know you and your skills. So if you memorize, you're not able to maybe handle a curveball. Okay, तो रट्टा मार के मत आओ, ये आपके बोर्ड के एग्जाम्स नहीं है. Understand what is expected of you, understand your skills, and try and communicate it as clearly as you can during the interview.
This might confuse few of you because we said in the second point that prepare your answers. What we meant by that is not like memorizing word to word. What we meant by preparation is having a framework ready so that it helps you during the time of interview. So have that framework ready, but don't memorize everything word to word.
Yeah. And I can also give an example, right? Let's talk about the question that we were discussing, which is tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
Usually what I tell my students and KARM fellows is you should have 4 lines for your tell me about yourself. Your name, your college, your subject. This is the first line.
Yeah.
Previous work experience, right? You can say maybe 2 lines about that and 1 line on hobbies. So this is a template. Now, this template can be filled according to what you're applying for, the kind of job that you're applying for. But template is something जो आप memorize or at least you can be mindful of. Don't memorize what you're filling in. Have the critical ability and the lateral thinking ability to be able to fill this according to what is being expected of you at these interviews. The next point that I like to talk about is body language. Body language is non-verbal communication, and so it's very important to also mindfully work towards that. This includes the eye contact that you make with your interviewer, the way that your shoulders are. You know, if you're too, I think, nervous, you tend to just sit like this, right? And you can't be too chilled, right? This is an interview. It's a formal process. So you've got to be very mindful of the way that you're presenting yourself. Look at your interviewer. Don't stare them down, but do so respectfully, and it really helps to practice with your friends, maybe once with your teachers or your mentors, people who can give you feedback so that you can present yourself more confidently. One thing that will link, back to the other points that we've mentioned before is memorizing. So what we tend to do as humans when we memorize things is we try and recall our answers and then we look up or we try to look down because we're trying to think, मैंने क्या रट्टा मारा था? Avoid doing that because then it completely throws you off balance and it's most likely to make you even more nervous. So memorization usually doesn't really help in an interview.
I want to add one point here. So if you're giving like an online interview, right, you might have your notes आपके पास. So sometimes we tend to read from the notes and look back to our notes again and again. So don't do that. The interviewer can clearly see that you're referring to your notes. So you can look, but that doesn't mean you're reading from your notes, right?
So by now we've covered the most essential things that we should be prepared for when going for an interview. But there's some additional bits of advice that we'd like to share with all of you.
Suppose your interview is in person and you have to reach a venue, right? So I would suggest that you plan your commute one day before the day of interview. You see which metro you want to take, where you have to take an auto, and all of this. Plan ahead so that you're not anxious during the day of interview, and also keep like half an hour buffer period, right? Say your interview is at 9, plan to reach by 8:30 at least, right? So that in case something goes wrong, you have enough time to make up for it.
Definitely. And be considerate of the fact that like real-time influences of the environment could definitely make you come late to the interview. This includes things like bad weather. It could suddenly start raining, or it could be a really bad day for traffic. Consider that.
Adding to that, carry cash. Suppose your UPI doesn't work that day, right? So it's always good to keep a stash of cash with you.
Definitely, very important, right? And while these excuses are understandable, they're not the most professional when coming for an interview. It's also good to coordinate with the person who might be handling your interview logistics, but don't do it on the day of the interview. Preferably do it a day before so that you're all ready. And again, this adds to your confidence for the interview. So what else do you take to an interview? You should essentially have a
interview kit. I would like to call it that.
And in this interview kit, first important thing are your documents. So take a couple of printouts of your CV and certificates and in a plastic folder so that in case it rains, your CVs and your certificates don't become wet.
Yeah, and also it's a good idea to carry a change of clothes in case something happens on the way. So you have something to change to.
Yeah.
And also carry a perfume maybe and a snack if that helps with your nerves, right? Carry a bottle of water, anything to make sure that you're comfortable
Yeah.
during the day of interview.
All right. And with all of that, we wish you all the best for the interview.